Let me rename the server to Kubernetes. Let me log into the server. And first and most thing, what is kubectl? The Kubernetes command line tool, that means kubectl means Kubernetes command line tool, is a kubectl, allows you to run the commands against Kubernetes clusters. You can use kubectl to deploy applications, inspect and manage cluster resources, and also we can able to view the logs. So if we can start with the Kubernetes kubectl command to check the kubectl version, we can able to use kubectl version space -- client. This command can be used. So this version information is duplicated and will be replaced with the output from the kubectl - short command. I mean, either client can be used or short command can be used. Use - output is equal to haml but pipe JSON to get the full version. Client version info major :1, -25, like this. Some output will reflect like this. Okay. Let's see that whether kubectl, what is there, kubectl version -CLI client. So look at here, this is the client version, this is the customized version. So this command will use to check the version. This is kind. So there are two types of two ways we can able to create a cluster. One is using kind, another one using minikube. The advantage of using kind will be, if we use kind, we can able to create a multi-node cluster. Multi-node means multiple worker nodes and multiple control plane nodes. Like this we can create. But when it come to minikube, it's a single node cluster, means only one node can able to create and only we can able to use one node cluster only. That's the reason. So many of the people, they'll go with kind only. Kind is a better tool to create the cluster. In case, if at all you want to see that, any of the things which are running in this particular one. So for example, you want to see that either Docker is there or not. Info. Might be Docker also installed. So look at this is the Docker info. Docker also installed and Docker is working fine, but there are no containers and there is no images because we didn't create them. We're going to create them, then we'll get some understanding. So we'll use kubectl get kubectl config current hyphen context. Current context is not set. That means there is no cluster. That's the reason nothing was set. This command will use to check the context. Context means you are in which cluster. Like this, it is going to be reflect. So, but right now we didn't create any cluster, right? That's the reason it's not showing anything. What are the commands you're going to learn as part of this means kubectl help command. If I run that, this will going to give some understanding. Look at these are the famous commands which you're going to use as part of the Kubernetes. Kubernetes space help command. This command will going to list out all the commands which you're going to use. We can see here kubectl controls the Kubernetes cluster manager. Find more information at this place. Create resources from a file or stdin. Then expose command, take a replication controller service deployment or pod and expose it a new Kubernetes service. Run, set, like this multiple commands are there. These commands can be used to like work with the Kubernetes. And also we have a Kubernetes command hyphen help options also there. We can able to use that. So this will going to give the other extra options which are available in the Kubernetes. The following options can be passed to any of the command. Like this. Like kubectl. You want to see what are the pods are running. Kubectl pods. This will list out. This is not the pods. This is the error. Because what is saying unhandled error could not get current server API group list. Okay, that means nothing was running. There is no cluster. That's the reason it was not showing anything. But once we created the cluster, right, in that if you are able to put up something, then we can able to see what are the things are running, what are things are there in this. I'll show how to create at the starting and creating a kind cluster. I said, right, you can use the kind to create a cluster, right? So I'll show that how to create a cluster using kind. So let me create a cluster kind space create create space kind space create space cluster. If I enter this, this will going to create the cluster. You can see this creating a cluster with a name called kind. By default, it will take the name kind. You can see this.
Kind will create a single node, no, sir?
Because I didn't provide any name, right? Kind create cluster, that is only a given. By default, as per the functionality, it will take the name as same name. Kind is the name it will take by default. Anyway, I'm gonna show also how to create a cluster with a different name also.
Okay, sir, but I wanted to know whether single node will be created, no? Single server will be created, correct, no, sir?
Single node only, single node cluster this would be.
This kind command, kind create cluster.
I didn't pass anything, right? That's the reason single node cluster is created here. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Like this, you'll get the output. This is the outcome. That means you can judge that the cluster is being created. Now you want to see more about the cluster means this is the one kubectl cluster info context kind. If you use this, this will going to give some more information about the cluster. See, Kubernetes control plane we're discussing, right? Kubernetes will have a two planes. One is control plane, other one is working plane, right? Other control node and worker nodes, like that. So you can see this is a control plane only running at so and so. Then code is running at this is the port, this is the range. Okay, so if I use this, now cluster is created anyway. We can experience that whether the cluster is correctly working fine or not. Kubectl cluster -info -context kind. Okay. kubectl. First, let me check what cluster is created. Kind get clusters. clustrs clusters. Able to see the cluster is created with a name called kind is a keyword. The cluster name is kind. Now I'll create one more. First we'll see what are the commands are there in the help page with kind. Able to see kind creates and manages local Kubernetes clusters using Docker container nodes. Remember, kind creates and manages local Kubernetes clusters using Docker container nodes. Usage. Kind commands can be used. What are the commands? Kind build, kind completion, create, delete, export, get, help, load, version. Like this, these are the options are there with when you're using to create the resources. Kind build we can use, kind completion can be used like that. Okay. This is the help page. Now let me show how to create a new cluster with a name. Okay, in case your mind is very layman, you don't know how to create it. Okay, let me from the help page we'll go kind create help. We can see kind create flux, kind create commands can be used. Available commands are cluster. So that means kind create cluster -help. Under that, what are there? H config string, help, image string, kube config, name string, retain, -wait, duration, quiet, verbosity, like that. So I'll use kind create cluster -name, kind create cluster -name space name of the cluster. I'll give local. Name of the cluster is local. So look at this is the custom. I mean, I only given the name. My cluster name is local. But this, remember, this is all single node only. I said right. Using kind, we can able to create a multi-node cluster. Multiple clusters we can create. So one cluster already there. Another cluster I created now. You can see. I want to see where it's running. Kubectl cluster -info -context kind -local. This is using different port number. See, both are running with the control plane only, but this is using different port number. In case you want to see to further debug and diagnose the cluster problems, you can use kubectl cluster info dump. If you use this command will going to give more information. Look at, I run the command here. Node list, API version, metadata, items, local control plane, version. Like this, multiple things are reflecting. IP range, CPU. Like this, if I come a little bit down, you need to press enter button. So this will going to give complete information about the cluster which you created. It's very lengthy is there. Okay, using this command we can able to achieve that. Now I want to see kind get clusters, how many are there. Able to see two clusters there, one is kind, another one is local. If at all you want to know details about the each cluster, kubectl cluster cluster hyphen info, kubectl cluster hyphen info hyphen context kind hyphen kind. This is for default one. Same way, local if you want local. But you want to know whatever the things are there. Let's will do docker ps what is running, we'll see. So two nodes are running, you can see. One is for localhost, local control plane, another one is kind control plane. In case you want to see whatever the contexts are there, so kubectl config get context. See, kind hyphen local, both options are there. You can see a star mark is reflecting in which context you are using. Context means majorly which cluster name you are using. Okay, you can see star is there in kind hyphen local. I want to change that. Okay, before that, let me check what are the nodes are there. Kubectl get nodes. I have only one node is there. There's one only ready. Now I want to change the context. Remember, I want to change the context. Then same command here. Instead of get, use context name kind hyphen local. I can change that. So kind hyphen kind. I'm already in local. I'll change it to kind hyphen kind. So choose the context to kind hyphen kind. Now if at all you want to check, see, earlier star was there for a downstream. Now it's there for kind hyphen kind. It was run. You can see local control plane, kind control plane, two are there. It was changed. In each cluster, which node is there, we can able to check that. Now what I'll do means, have two clusters, right? I have two clusters, right? I'll delete one cluster. I'll delete one cluster. How to delete? Kind delete, kind delete cluster. Without name means it will delete the first one. That means the which we created without name, right? That one. That's the name is kind. Now only one cluster is pending with us now. That is kind-local. Let me verify that. Kind get clusters. See, local only there. In case both you want to delete, assume that kind delete cluster hyphen name of the cluster. So local. Deleted this also. See. Now kind get clusters, if I do nothing, empty, no kind clusters are found. Understood? Now how to create the clusters are clear. How to check the nodes also clear. How to check the context also clear. Next what we'll going to do means, so I'll write the code using code. I'll write the YAML code. In general in Kubernetes world we used to call manifest file. I'll create a manifest file. Using manifest file, how to create a cluster we're going to see. Okay. I'll create one folder mkdir yamls amls cd space yamls amls. So here I'm going to create a cluster. So I'll say the name of the file name is anything. Local.yml I'll give local.yml hyphen insert. How we need to write this file means very simple. There's a keyword called kind will come, kind colon space. What are you trying to create? I'm trying to create cluster, right? cluster cluster. See capital cluster. Kind node, kind pod, kind container, like this service. What component you want to create, that we can able to pass. Next, so next one, API V capital version, API version colon space. I want to create a kind with dot x hyphen k8 dot io slash v1 alpha alpha 4. This is the default API version which we are using. This is a default API version which we are using. Enter. Next we need to give name colon name of the cluster. I'll give local. Name of the cluster local. Then we need to specify the nodes. How many nodes you want? Nodes colon enter hyphen role colon. I'll give first one is control hyphen plane main, right? This one is the main. Then hyphen role colon. Next one I'll call it as a worker. Similarly, two workers I'm creating, one control plane and remaining two workers. Worker. That means this is a 3-node cluster. Master come to worker. Okay, I'm done with the things. I can save this. Escape shift semicolon WQ cat local.yml Now I need to create a cluster, right? Using the file I need to create a cluster. Then let's see how to create it. Kind create cluster config file name. Mine is local at YML, right? Kind create cluster config config local at YML. We'll see it's creating or not. See, it's creating. The file what we wrote, right? The YAML file that is called as a manifest file. In the Kubernetes word, that's we call it as a manifest file. Remember. Okay, it's created. kubectl, the kind get clusters. First we'll see. Only one cluster is there, that is local. Now let's verify kubectl get nodes. See, 3-node cluster. I said it, control plane, worker 1, worker 2. Like this is a 3-node cluster. We'll see which context we're in. kubectl config current context This is the current kubectl config get context. Next, nodes also we saw the 3-node cluster. Now we'll see what are the pods are running. kubectl get PO. PO means pods. Other PODS. Both are same. No pods are running. Where? In the namespace. Now we have one more command, capital A -o void. What this command is going to do means, this command is going to list out pods which are running in different namespaces. What is namespace means? Namespace is a segregation of the resources based upon the directory structure or separation. See, there are multiple pods are running, but they are running in different namespaces. Okay. So you can see kubectl config-h modify kube config files using subcommands like kubectl config set current-context my-context loading folder order files. This for rules like this we can able to use this multiple things. Available command current-can display the current context, delete the cluster, delete the specified cluster from the kube config context, delete the specified context from the kube config, delete user, get clusters, get context, kubectl like we'll see kubectl config get clusters. It's getting up. Rename context, get contexts. Thus we know that get users. If any users are that reflect.
Sir, you mentioned about that the namespaces, no, in different namespaces, different pods are running. Will you explain about that one more time?
Yeah. So the word namespace nothing but let me show that here. See, in Kubernetes, namespaces are way to organize and manage resources within a cluster. Like you heard about Linux folders, right? What is the use of these Linux folders? What exactly you're doing the things with the Linux folder?
Create creating the storing the data, creating the folders, creating the files.
Correct. So if you create a folder and if you store data inside that folders, what is the advantage? So the files which are there in this folder, the files which are there in another folder, even the fourth file same also, same name if you give also, nothing to worry, correct? That means you are organizing your resources in a structure wise, correct? That is called as a folders in the Linux. But namespaces means namespaces also kind of a same. Namespaces are way to organize and manage the resources in within a cluster, in the same cluster. So you kind of a multiple directories wise it is going to manage the things. They provide a way to provide a cluster into multiple virtual clusters. Remember this is the valid word. So that means namespaces is going to divide the single cluster into inside logical clusters. It means virtual clusters is going to be created, each with its own set of namespaces, own set of resources, making it easier to manage large environments, especially multi-tenant scenarios. Here are the some of the key aspects of the namespaces in Kubernetes. Let me tell you in my organization how we are using. Okay, so we have one cluster only. In that cluster, we have applications which are running in Nginx, and also we do have the application running for Tomcat, Apache, database, backend servers, like this multiple things are there. But how do I create all together? If I create all together, what will happen? People will get confused which is related to Tomcat, which is related to Apache. People will get confused. So what I'm doing means I'll create a namespace called Tomcat, namespace called Nginx, like that. So when I'm provisioning a pod, right, if I'm spinning up a Nginx pod means I'll map that Nginx pod to that particular Nginx namespace only. Athava, recently what we came across means team wise we came across one namespace is team. So inside the team we'll be passing as a application value, like that. Namespaces help isolate the different resources like pods, services, and deployments, etc. So that they don't want to conflict with each other. For example, if I have multiple teams working with the same Kubernetes cluster, you can create separate namespaces for each team, and they won't accidentally overlap in the resource names. That's a one way. Naming resources within a namespace must have unique names within the names within that namespace. But the same resource name can be different used in different namespaces. For example, you should have two different services named front end in two different namespaces. Example, team 1 and team 2 both having front end only. Okay, like that. Default namespace. If a resource is created without specifying a namespace, it is placed in the default namespace. This is the default behavior unless you specify the otherwise. Limit to resource usage. Namespaces allow for resource quotas and limits to be applied to manage the how CPU, how much CPU, how much memory, and other resources names can consume. This helps in controlling the resource allocation for different projects or teams within the cluster. Also, we can able to control RBAC also, role-based access control. Namespaces can be used in conjunction with the role-based access control RBAC to define permissions and policies. For example, you can assign specific set of users or teams access to only one or subset of namespaces. The network policies, we can define network policies to control the communication between the pods in the different namespaces. Okay, like this. Let me share this information. You guys can go through this. You'll get some clear idea how namespaces can be used. Okay. Majorly for dividing a cluster into multiple use cases, we'll use this. Okay. Any questions or confusions? How to check that kubectl?
So, what you have used that in this one? What prompt you have used in ChatGPT, sir?
Just I use the
To
namespace.
search this information, what your prompt used? You have
Namespace
used, no?
in
The
KX.
question you have used.
Namespace in
Okay,
KX.
okay, okay.
That's it. Okay. So look at this is the namespaces are there by default. I didn't create any namespace. These are default namespaces. Make sure. So in next class, I'll show how to create my own custom namespace. Okay. And how to deploy the pods over there and how to do services deployment. Those other practicals we'll discuss in the next class. Okay. Any questions or confusions? Please let me know.
Till now, we didn't create any pod, no, sir. Those are the default only namespaces, correct, no, sir?
Namespaces. We didn't create anything except the cluster. We didn't create anything. I mean, with the cluster only, the namespace is this one is came. What is
Got
that?
it, got it.
Nodes are came. Okay, 3 node cluster, right? It's came, but we didn't create any resources inside that. I'll show how to create the resources in next class.
Okay, sir. Got it, got it, got it. Only we created a cluster, that's it. That was three node cluster.
Exactly, 3 node cluster. Using the 3 node cluster, how to provision the resources, which you're going to learn in the next class. I don't want to be overloaded with you guys. That's the
Usually,
reason.
how many nodes will be there in the company? Depending upon the company structure and how large the company is. But still, what could be the default one, sir, according to you?
So people based upon the project that too depends upon. Okay, how many nodes will be there in typical cluster in K8? Size of the organization, workload requirements, and intended use case. However, the Kubernetes cluster can vary greatly in size, and there is no strict one size fits all answer. Below the sum of the typical designs. Nodes 1 to 3 nodes people can use. Where small scale for development clusters, 3 to 10 node for medium scale clusters, 10 plus nodes, sometimes hundreds of nodes also. That is for large enterprise workloads. Clear? I think in my company we have around 7 to 8 clusters, 8 nodes are there. In my company, 7 to 8 nodes are there. I mean, ours is not so big organization, so but we have 7 to 8 nodes we are managing. Okay, you read out this, you will understand. So
just mention that the prompt also, sir. What prompt you used? The version you used, no? Yes, that one is more, yeah.
okay, then next class we'll catch up and we'll explain about how to provision the resources, pods, then services, containers. Those we'll discuss. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.